let's begin with the foundation, and that's the cow herd, right? So I would ask you all, as folks begin evaluating their cow herd, what sort of criteria and factors should they be considering? And Dan, I'm going to start with you. I recently read an article that suggested that just about 80% of the nation's cow herd is British-based. What would you guide folks to do?
Well, I think it starts with data. You know, it's a data-driven business today, and so the record keeping at the commercial level, I think, is essential in terms of evaluating productivity, evaluating marketing opportunities, and setting goals for an operation. Until you have those goals set, that I think going further and making changes is a little bit challenging. So I think it starts with record keeping and goal setting to help producers be in a position to move in the direction they want to go.
Very good. What would you say, Chip?
I would concur with Dan. The business is changing, and we are going to have to identify some metrics that give us knowledge. And so whether that comes in the fashion that if you do nothing else, know the caliber, quality, and reg number of the bull you're buying, right? So you can at least source back to some of that knowledge. For some, it's going to be much more sophisticated data collection. Maybe it gets into the realm of genomics, potentially even genetic eval for some commercial producers. So I think knowing your cow herd, it's nearly implausible to make breeding and mating decisions if you don't know your cow herd. And then from there, using time-tested tools of quality genetics, appropriate heterosis where it matters, those tools put you in the best position for a longevity-minded cow herd.
You know, one of the things we talk about that separates the cattle business from, let's say, the hog business is that we have to run cows in various environments. We can't throw them in a barn and manage them the same all across the United States. And so I'm going to turn to my Texas friends and ask, first of all, what role does environment play, and what are some of the factors and criteria somebody should be thinking about as they consider their environment, feed resources, weather, climate, all those things? Joe?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for us in the southern Gulf Coast, is all the way from Texas all the way to Florida, is the environmental adaptability of these cattle to thrive in wet and marshy type country, as well as those cattle that can crossbreed and go out there with some longevity. I think knowing that cow herd in the environment, you know, it's going to go back to, you know, looking at feet and leg structure. How do we get these cattle to move and have that longevity? And then as well as deal with the insect population that we have with mosquitoes and flies. And so I think the Brahman influenced cattle, you know, can help with that.
Sure.
And, you know, I've always been a firm believer that, you know, you get to the Gulf Coast of Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, those quarter bloods are important.
Gotcha. What would you say from Beefmaster standpoint?
I would certainly agree with Joe. It's vitally important when we start talking about how important it is to have some diversity within breeds, and so that it excels and helps us move forward with our crossbreeding programs and take advantage of heterosis and some of the free dollars that are out there today. Then we turn into some of the longevity and adaptability portions that are current in our Indicus cattle and how they can thrive in these really harsh environments.
You know, bull selling season is right around the corner. Obviously, it's already begun in many parts of the world, and I'm curious, what would you tell producers in terms of what they should be thinking about when they get those catalogs and begin selecting bulls? Mark?
I think the most vital thing is know your cow herd. You know, if you know what they're doing at your place, and I mean, the business, as you guys are aware, is so competitive right now in a challenging environment to operate in. You're trying to reduce your costs and increase the value of your calf crop. So what Dan had talked about, the record keeping, the data, and then apply the tools that breed associations offer to go ahead and look at those EPDs, understand percentile ranks and accuracies on cattle, the application of genomics that Chip talked about. We're so much farther ahead than we were 5 years ago. There's value in doing some research and trying to find these cattle that can accelerate your genetic progress, I think, Kevin, and from the fact that just break-even standpoint and creating value, utilize breed associations to help you understand that data, because such a tremendous amount of record keeping has come together to try to provide good, accurate data. When you buy those cattle for your seed stock, they're going to do what predictable. So
that's good. Chip?
Well, I think you've heard everybody mention the cow herd, clearly, right? And so buying bulls without knowing your cows is a bit chasing your tail. But I'm going to dovetail off something Mark just said, because he talked break even. I guess maybe I'd argue for the last 20, 25 years, the business has been all about talking revenue. Let's talk profit, right? And so I think when you're sourcing bulls, you need to utilize tools that can help you identify profit on the two sides of most folks' business. Now, for those folks who are buying all their females, it's different. They can be very terminally focused. But if you're retaining daughters, you need to utilize tools that allow you to identify appropriately maternal metrics, but then also to weigh them appropriately in your bull battery, not overweigh them so that you're sacrificing all terminal merit for the very limited number of females you're keeping, or vice versa. And so I would argue that we're in a world where index tools are clearly, they're useful in every other animal species. It works. And I think that's arguably a place we need to focus more on in bull season.
And help simplify all the data if you use those indexes. We'll follow up on that a little later. What would you add?
Well, I would just say that as we know, our cow herds are getting smaller, and most ranchers are working in town.
Sure.
And they start looking at bull buying season as those traits that they need to look at for that cow herd on calving docility, those kind of things that are going to help them when they get off of work, and if they're going to have to be dealing with dystocia issues or that kind of aspect. But I think just as Chip said, the indexes are really important. Not just the single EPDs, but what type of indexes can we have, and we have some new ones in Brahman that can help those producers figure out, are they going to retain females? Are they selling on the grid? Are they going to, are they just selling across the market as well?
Goes back to what your objective is, right?
Sure, and Kevin, it doesn't have to be either or. I think that's maybe the perception out there, that there are cattle that work really good in the pasture. There's some cattle that work really good in the feedlot, but there's a lot of cattle that do both. And we've got better tools than we've ever had to find those cattle and put those cattle to work where they belong. And so that's, you just need to study a little bit, learn these new tools that all the organizations are bringing out. But, the whole goal is to make it simple and straightforward. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We just follow up with a little more education.
Collin?
And I'd echo that. We talk a lot with our producers about their toolbox and what they have to use in that toolbox. And those tools are there for a reason. There's no reason not to utilize them. There's no doubt that profitability and efficiency go hand in hand in the industry, and we have to be cognizant of those things. Cows that go out and work hard, do a great job of weaning heavy calves and raising replacements, as Dan said. It can go hand in hand, and utilizing the tools that breed associations have brought to the forefront for commercial
to really find
and
those
seed
unique
stock.
Animals. I think that's what Dan mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tools and services breed associations offers. Interesting, a report that I recently read indicated that about 35% of the people were asking for registration papers, which I thought was incredibly low. I'd be curious to have each of you tell us some of the services that you provide and what are the benefits of buying a registered animal. Dan, you're represent the largest breed association. Let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that information in your hands as a commercial producer and being able to access up-to-date information is critical. But that also then opens up a whole set of avenues, particularly on the marketing side. Angus with Angus Source and Angus Link, those programs, being able to connect in, and we're glad to help producers market those cattle and get the genetic value out of them. Sure. You've made the investment in top-end bulls that do a lot of things well. There's value in those calves. We just have to bring some transparency to the marketplace. And so that program in Angus Link is something we're very excited about, because we think we can really differentiate between cattle that have added value in the marketplace.
What are some of the services the Beefmaster Breed Association offers?
So certainly we think there's a viable opportunity there to validate genetics, as Dan said, through registration papers and a known pedigree and a background for known performance of what these animals can do and what we expect them to do. So the marketing avenues and opportunities that are out there are all being tied back to value-added programs, and being able to fit those specialized programs is vitally important today, and we feel that's the need and the direction that we're moving.
I'm curious, you guys export a lot of your genetics, and I'm curious, what does the association offers in terms of services related to marketing and international marketing?
Well, yes, Kevin, we do a lot of international marketing in the association. I think it goes back to, keeping that integrity to our herd book, parent verification, the education on our international guests as well as to what do they need in their cow herds. And so as we move forward, I think in the Brahman Association or any breed association, education is key to let them know what we have. And then as far as domestically, our F1 program, that hybrid vigor program, that's really strong. The kind of the queen of the cow country is that Hereford Brahman cross. And then we have some sales just for those cattle.
I see.
And then as well, we have our big international sale in Houston every year. Right. It brings a lot of international exposure to the American Brahman.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Chip, how about the Simmental Association?
Well, I think for any of us, we'd say our core competency is genetic evaluation, right? All of us admit, without doing that credibly and well, the rest of it frankly doesn't matter. But I think your question's really appropriate because to a large extent, we're evolving a bit to really becoming a service provider. And in some cases, that directly aligns with some of our historical applications. Some cases, maybe it grates and chafes against that just a little bit, and we have to work and navigate through that. So yes, internally, from a Simmental standpoint, we need to provide opportunities, tools, and incentives to help our breeders do their job. Yep. But the Simmental Group, as you know, is a very open herd book. Yep. So we do data for any and all, including EPDs for commercial cow-calf operations. But probably the biggest and unique opportunity we have falls in a partnership that we do with a whole host of breed associations. We actually work with in a group that's called International Genetic Solutions. It's a fairly substantial genetic evaluation, totally multi-breed, 16 breed populations, and the 17th partner is Neogen Genomics. And so trying to reach out to where we can meet any producer. If you are looking for the pinnacle of genetic awareness through structured genetic evaluation, phenotypes, genomics, we have a place for you. If you're a commercial producer who has that hard to capture data we all love, cow longevity, carcass data, we can incorporate that. Or if you're like the masses, well, I want other folks to do that, but I want to benefit, then you have tools like iGenity and the like that can come in there. And so again, I think it's becoming a multi-tiered approach to our job.
And a multi-breed approach, to your point.
Amen.
Mark?
Very much spin off probably what Chip's saying through the cooperation with International Genetic Solutions. The power of that herd book, and I think being able to crossbreed, compare EPDs for those cattle that are involved in there. I think you've got 17 breeds in there now, Chip. I think it's pretty powerful when we can look at the cattle, combine the genomics with all the performance data in there, and be able to make accurate comparisons as we're looking at trying to find genetics that fit our commercial cow herds throughout the country. There's so many things that commercial producers can do, and don't be bashful about calling any of these breed associations, I'm sure, but we've got wonderful opportunities just in our herd book for an individual to pull up cattle for the 17 traits, and you can set your EPD parameters. You want homozygous black, you want homozygous polled, you want, we don't want a single trait select, but if we're weak in 2 or 3 areas, we can query cattle that if we're going to bull sales, we can pull up a list, get it on an Excel spreadsheet that actually can help you find the cattle out there that you're trying to make progress with. So
very good. Some targeted genetics for your needs.